If you've ever tried to model your life after someone completely flawless, you know the quiet frustration that eventually sets in. It is one thing to draw inspiration from a perfect being. It is entirely another to try and imitate them when you are struggling to simply get through the day. The scriptural record makes a very specific claim about Jesus. It states clearly that he was tempted in every single way, exactly as we are. But we immediately run into a conflicting theological truth. Human beings have fallen natures. We carry internal desires like greed, selfishness, and pride. Satan often only needs to stir what is already there. Jesus had absolutely none of that. His internal state was completely clean. There was no hidden corruption for a temptation to exploit. This creates a logical problem. If Jesus didn't feel the internal pull toward sin that we wrestle with every day, the whole scenario feels rigged. It feels like he was playing the game on God mode, rendering his trials entirely different from ours. However, a total lack of internal corruption removed the escape hatch humans usually take. To see why his trials were actually more taxing, we have to look at the mechanics of how temptation functions. Without a dark internal desire to exploit, the attacks on Jesus had to follow an entirely different rule of engagement. Satan was forced to target his completely legitimate, pure human needs. Look at the first trial in the wilderness. Jesus had been fasting for 40 days. He was starving. The physical desire for food is pure. There is absolutely no sin in wanting to eat. Look at this decision tree. The first trial, starvation, tempts him to use divine power independently. The second, needing rescue, tempts him to manipulate circumstances. The final trial, winning the world, offers a forbidden shortcut. All three incorrect paths collapse into one failure point: distrust. Temptation targets the point where faith meets physical and emotional reality. It invites us to bridge the gap between our needs and God's promises through our own strength. On a tension line chart, human temptation rises until hitting a breaking point. Once a person yields, the psychological struggle drops to zero. But when someone never gives in, the pressure curve bypasses that threshold, spiking upward into an unrelenting, exponential peak of sustained attack. Because Jesus lacked a sinful nature, he didn't have a quick mechanism to cave in and relieve the pressure. He absorbed the entire unbroken assault from the very beginning to the very end, a level of endurance humanity cannot comprehend. He also faced external variables that uniquely compounded that pressure. He had to maintain absolute trust in God while holding the salvation of the world on his shoulders, all under a concentrated satanic attack. Jesus' sinlessness stripped away any possibility of relief. Because he never yielded, he experienced the full weight of the assault until the temptation was exhausted. When you look at the historical record of human failure, the contrast is stark. The first Adam faced his test of trust in a lush, vibrant botanical paradise and failed. The second Adam faced his test while starving on a cracked, lifeless desert floor and succeeded. This reframes the daily struggle. Often, the conflict beneath a specific habit or desire is a struggle of trust. We are deciding if God is reliable enough to provide for our security, love, or success in his own time. When our completely legitimate needs for security, love, or success go unmet, our first instinct is to seize control. We want to manipulate our circumstances and force an outcome, exactly like the invitations offered in the wilderness. This suggests that temptation is more than a behavioral test where we try to avoid doing bad things. It is an opportunity to practice trust in God's goodness, especially during periods of severe deprivation. Where the first Adam and Israel faltered, Christ showed that the path through the wilderness is paved with trust. Our own endurance rests on that same commitment, relying on the Father's word even when every visible circumstance screams that he has forgotten us.